All right. So yes. So the topic I'm sure you all saw, we're going to be talking about live events, Teams meetings, and webinars. Oh my. So tried going with the Wizard of Oz theme, just because you got three things. Throw an oh my in there, and woohoo, we're Wizard of Oz. So a little bit about me. On, if I get the slides to advance. There we go. So as mentioned, my name is Ryan Schouten. I'm a senior technical consultant at Zillow. So we do content migrations from old legacy systems, file shares, all this stuff, to more modern systems. For example, SharePoint Online, OneDrive, and associated tools. So we specialize in the ugly, nasty migrations that most companies don't want to deal with. Also, I have been working with SharePoint for just a few years now. I think I'm up to 15 years. Couldn't come working on the 16th year. So I tell people I started out with SharePoint. I started out as a company as a web team as the web team lead. The company decided, hey, we're going to SharePoint, and they said, figure it out. So got drug into SharePoint, kicking and screaming, and now you'd have to do the same thing to get me out of it. Also, as was mentioned, I one of the co-founders of the Microsoft 365 Virtual Marathon. That'll be coming up in a few weeks. A large 3-day long global conference with content running 24 hours from 9 a.m. on the 4th till 5 p.m. on the 6th. So a lot of content, a lot of good stuff, and from people around the world. So if there's almost always going to be something that you want to just, if you want to jump into a session, a specific time, you're more than welcome to do so. Also, I'm a partner at Emperor Media Group. As me and Galen Keene set this up for doing a lot of events, and this actually came out of the first virtual marathon 3 years ago. No, 2 years ago. We're on our third one, but just kind of realized there was a need, and as part of it, a lot of the content for today is coming from those discussions, those discoveries. We're like, oh, cool. Here's things that we've learned, and we figured let's go do what we can to kind of help others benefit from that. So a little bit of the agenda. Our goal today is we're going to explore how the land of Oz was impacted by the pandemic. So how they're able to carry on with the Wicked Witch of the West's dastardly schemes, even though she couldn't get out. We're also going to talk about some different ways and how our heroes were able to compensate and be able to still accomplish their goal. So the first thing we're going to be talking about is live events. Now, live events is one of those things a couple years ago, especially when we started the pandemic, was still fairly new, not very well adopted. With the first virtual marathon we put on, we did the entire event in live events. Needless to say, within the first hour of the event, we broke teams. We had so many sessions going on at once, and all too much going on that it just shut down, and we had to use our Microsoft contacts and say, hey, something's wrong here. So we were able to get it up, and then it was flawless the rest of the time. So it's just, I think a lot of the spinning up, getting used to everybody using as much as they could, because some of the things we'll see a little bit later today, Microsoft increased a lot of the limits going into the pandemic. And right now, there's some of those limits that they increased are scheduled to roll off. So there's things that we have right now that we may lose in the future, but we'll see. I'm kind of hoping they keep it together and keep so we can take advantage of it, but we'll see. So the thing about live events and across the board, looking at these different scenarios, a live event is mostly designed for a push fashion. So think about a large auditorium, for example, or if you've gone to conferences, you've got a large keynote room. The beauty of it is you're pushing content. You're not expecting much feedback, much cooperation, much interaction with the attendees. They're just there to consume the content. You do have the ability to turn on a moderated Q&A, so moderated question and answers, and that's the only way attendees have of interacting with the presenters. So, and the nice with that, you can turn off Q&A, so you only have it open during certain time frames, so you're not distracting from the content, distracting the speakers as they're doing their presentation. but it does also support some more advanced production capabilities, which the other areas that we're going to be talking about today do not. As far as production is concerned, you have two options. You can do it within teams. So that way, as far as your presenters are concerned, they just join a Teams meeting. And then you have a producer who actually goes in and is able to adjust and kind of change what content is showing. We can do a little bit of side by side. So you have your picture on one side and you have your slides on another. But then there's also an option, depending on what level you're going through, you can do full processing with a production studio, like a lot you see in a lot of streaming, that you can do some really cool things with lower thirds, introducing people, do the picture-in-picture mode like we have now. So it works really well. Now, there are some limitations that we'll talk about. And some of those are things you have to keep in mind when we're talking about an organizer, for example. There are certain things that they can do with an event versus a producer versus the presenter. The organizer and the producer, as far as the actual as the event's going is concerned, they're the same. There's not really a whole lot of difference going on there. If you're talking about the organizer can go ahead and make changes to the meeting, can go ahead and cancel it, but not too much difference. The presenter, like I said, they come into the meeting and for the most part, it looks like they're just in a Teams meeting. There's some extra little UI cues, but not a whole lot of difference. One of the things to keep in mind with a live event is that there is a delay of anywhere from 20 to 30 seconds of the audio and video. So that way I'll be saying something and then 20 to 30 seconds later is when people actually will see it. So it's one of those things you need to keep in mind when you're doing a Q&A. Because you will say something saying, hey, we're going to open the floor for Q&A, and they're not going to hear that until 30 seconds later at most. So keep it in mind. With this as well, there is the ability, you can have right now up to 20,000 attendees in a live event. But as you'll see, there's a little star here. This is one of those things that's set to revert back to 10,000 at the end of June. Microsoft has pushed it out throughout the pandemic, but it's one of those things that is likely to drop off. As we can see here, we do have the Wicked Witch of the West. She is consuming the content. She's keeping an eye on Dorothy, but she can't really interact. And that's kind of the same thing that we're talking with our live events. So first things first, let's go do a demo. We'll take a look at how you work with a Teams live event. So let me see. I'm going to switch to my screen. 1 second here. Got my screen up, but it's got to bring it over the top. There we go. All right, so here I am on another machine because trying to join a Teams live event while in another meeting just doesn't work. So actually, before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and pull this meeting up just so I can see. Okay, cool. The chat. I do see the comment there about the flying monkeys. I don't know. I don't know if somebody decided they wanted to eat one of those monkeys, one of them escaped, but we definitely have some things we have to deal with there. So as far as a live event, it used to be a little tricky to try and figure out how to get a live event. Now it is fairly easy. Make sure I use the correct mouse here. So within your Teams, you can go to your calendar and I can say, hey, click on the drop down. I can schedule a meeting, a webinar, or a live event. So we'll be looking at all three of these today. But for the first one, we're going to go with a live event. So I'm going to give it a title. Cool. We have some options here where I can add in different people. So I can say I want demo. Cool. And they come in as a presenter. I can also allow the ability to invite external presenters, which adds in some functionality for them to be able to come in and do what they need to. For this particular case, I'm not going to mess with it. But what I can do here is I can have the option, like I said, we have the organizer, which is me. As the organizer, by default, I am also a producer. So I can change myself to be a presenter, but that's kind of silly. But it can be done. Then also we have our demo user who I can also change either to be a producer or a presenter. Like I said, the presenter, when they come in, they'll just join the meeting as if it was a Teams meeting. All right, so from here, we got that good to go. And then we have some options. And this is one of the cool things that we can take advantage of fairly easily is with live events, we have different target audiences that we can work with. And one of the ones we do have is it's just public. So anybody that has the URL can sign in with or without, well, they can access it with or without signing in. So for this particular one, I'm going to go ahead and select public. Now, as I select public, though, you can see some of our different options go away. So because this is a public event, it's going to stay within Teams. I have to use Teams to produce the event. If I'm switching back to just something for your organization, you do have the option to do an external app or device. So you can take advantage of something like OBS or Streamlabs or any of these other different tools that can do an RTMP feed. Anything that can stream, you can share your content in that way. And go back to public here, that gets disabled. Also, we have options. So we have it by default, and you can't really change too much because the producers and presenters need it, but we can access the recording after the fact because live events are automatically recorded. You don't have to remember to press anything. You don't have to start it. It just starts. As soon as you start your live event, it starts the recording. Also, you can choose whether you want your attendees to be able to come back using the exact same link and access that recording. So that way, instead of having to say, okay, now I got to go get it and go post it somewhere, your attendees can come back in with video on demand. They can scroll, they can advance, do what you need to. Also, we do have the ability for automatic captioning. So it does say captions, but it is automatic. For example, I can select English as the main language. When we start out, we had English and Spanish. We have a whole lot more options now. So even to the point of we have Canadian French and French. Lots of different languages here that we can choose as the spoken language. So as part of that, it's going to automatically take that language, transcribe it into the exact same language, but now in text. Also, you can choose up to 6 different languages to be able to have it translate those captions as well. So that way, if you're a multinational company, you can select 6 languages and probably going to be your key languages, and they can change their language to pick that up. Now, for the geeks in the room, I do find it rather hilarious. Let's see. There is a language that I saw in here that is just funny that it's here. So I'm going to go ahead and select this one. So if you happen to have some people that are fluent in Klingon, you can have your live events translated into Klingon for those people. Kind of cool. I don't know if there's a lot of use cases for it, but it does make it kind of fun. All right, so we got Klingon. All right. Also, you do get an attendee engagement report. So what this is it gives you back who joined and how, essentially, who actions. Somebody joined and who they are and when they left. So really comes in handy. Now, if you keep in mind, if we're doing this as a public event, it is possible that we won't know. It'll just say anonymous because they don't have to sign in. So you can see, okay, anonymous joined, anonymous left. Also, we have the option to turn on Q&A. Now, with this, Q&A allows you to be able to do it. And even if you turn it on, you can turn it off. So that way you have your Q&A period during certain sections of the event. So for example, if I go ahead and turn it on, and we can see we've hit all of our options here. I'm going to go ahead and hit schedule. So once this goes, it's going to go set this up. Cool. And now I can go grab the attendee link. Pretty easy. So let's go ahead and just jump into this just so you can see what this looks like. Yep. I'm going to go ahead and mute my mic. I don't need it here. So what this is going to do, we now have our Teams live event presentation platform. So what it gives you, yes, I know my microphone's not working. I'm not using it. So you have your left pane, which is your queue, your content that's coming up. Your right pane is what everybody is seeing. So with this content, I can now say, hey, I want to turn on my camera. So we'll turn on my camera here, hopefully. We now have the other view of me. And then I can say, you know what, this content, I'm going to select over here, put me live. And now I'm on the screen. I also have the ability, I can do a content on left, which automatically now moves my picture to the right. And now I can share screen. Or if you have another presenter that is sharing their screen, you can put that content in there and you can work with it. Now, for example, if you have back and forth, you have people doing different pieces, you can have the content stay and change, toggle between cameras. Now, the one thing with this as well, it is a Teams meeting. So you can have everybody's cameras lined up across the bottom here, but you get one shared desktop at a time. So for example, if I'm sitting here doing my presentation and Angela decides that she wants to get ready and start sharing her screen, as soon as she starts, it immediately wipes out, takes over, just like you would in a Teams meeting. So one thing to keep in mind. Also, we do have the nice status up here that says, hey, this is pre-live. We're not live yet. So if your attendees jump into the meeting URL, this is what they'll see. They'll see a message that says, hey, the live event hasn't started. So if I go ahead and switch back to just a single view here, I can now send my video live. Click. There we go. And so now I have the option to hit start. Okay, now they're saying, hey, yep, it's going to go up. Your event can go for hours. One of the things I didn't mention is right now, in one of these COVID timeframes, your live event can run for 16 hours. I don't know many organizations that are going to have a live event running that long, but it is possible. And they say that it could be a 10 to 20 second delay. Most of it's just goes through the processing, so it's variable. All right, so go ahead and hit continue, and it says starting live event. Now, like I said before, the right-hand side is what's live, what they can see. On the left, I can queue up. So if I want to get ready to make a change, I can prep it up, and then when it's ready, I can hit send live. Within this, we still have chat. Chat is only between presenters and producers. Attendees do not see this chat. So you have a nice option, so you can do your background chat. You can do your coordination, make sure everybody's ready to roll. And then with this as well, we have the option for Q&A. Okay, so with this live Q&A, somebody can jump on, they'll post their question. As you can see, we have the option to open and close. So if I close the Q&A, nobody can post any questions at this point in time. As soon as I'm ready, we'll open it. They can post a question. I can make announcements. The nice part about this as well is with these questions, you have two different options. You can reply directly to the person that asked the question, or you can reply and you can publish the question and then reply to it and everybody can see it. So for example, you can do both. So you could have an example where you say, hey, someone asked a question and you can respond to them directly, say, hey, that's a great question. We'll get back to that. We'll respond to that here in a minute. And then you can publish it and give the official full answer if you want. Also with this, one of the things to keep in mind, there is the end button. The end button will end your live event. It used to be, up until late last year when they released the feature, it was permanent. If you end it, it's done. Nobody can get back in again. Now it's less so that you actually can restart it, so it's not a huge deal. But early on, this was the only big red button. So you had the tendency for producers to think they were leaving the live event and they would just hit red, because that's what we've been trained to. Even right now in our Teams meeting, if I hit the big red button on the screen, it's leave, which, okay, makes sense. But if you hit this end button, it closes it, shuts it down, and everybody's out of it. So keep in mind, that's one thing I do as well, just every once in a while, okay, red button, no, I'm not there, I need to go up here. So they now made it more obvious that we have the standard leave button in the same Teams location. Then when we're done, I will go ahead and hit end. It does say, yeah, you can come back in and do a restart. All right, and then it's going to change out here on the right, and it says the live event is ended. Okay, and like I said, it's going to go through, process the recording, put it out there, and make it available. So at this point in time, I'm going to say, hey, I'm good. Let's close. All right. Are there any questions on live events? Oh, that's good. All right. Fine. Sweet. So we will carry on here. All right. So next one is Teams meetings. So a Teams meeting, as we've all participated in, I'm sure throughout the pandemic, whether especially if you're here today, you've participated in a Teams meeting because we're in one. The goal of a Teams meeting is to make it more interactive. As you can see here, we got Dorothy talking with the Munchkins. It is designed to be an interactive, back and forth, collaborative space. With that, the attendees can provide feedback immediate, whether that is a reaction, whether they can do different emojis, or they can communicate directly through chat or audio video. With that as well, because this is a Teams meeting, there is no delay. So I am saying something, you are hearing it and seeing it in real time. One of the other things, I was doing a presentation within the last couple of weeks on the same similar topic, and somebody made the analogy that I really like is that when we're talking about comparing between a Teams meeting and a webinar, for a Teams meeting, this is I am pushing the invite to you. I am saying, hey, I want you to attend this. Now, when we'll talk about webinars, it's more of a pull. I want to go participate. Now, when we're talking about Teams meetings, I can do up to 1,000 attendees in full participation mode, just like we're all here right now. We can turn on our camera, we can turn on our microphone, we can chat. It's all good. Beyond that, they've implemented what's known as the view only mode. So attendee 1001 comes in, they will be able to still consume the content in the meeting, but they are now in view only. So they can watch it, they can interact with chat, but they can't turn on their camera, they can't unmute their mic. So if you have a large group and you want people to be able to come in, to be able to do that, make sure they come in. If you're going to have more than 1,000 people, make sure those people that you want to be able to come out off mute, get in early. Otherwise, they're out of luck. Now, again, like I said, 20,000 is a current COVID limit. We'll see if that continues on or if they bump it out again. Demo, we've seen this. It's not anything super interesting. So I will switch back to this window real quick. Nothing super fancy. If I create a new meeting, if I click with the correct mouse, I can create a new meeting. So we have a lot of different options. Now, the cool things we've got is we do have the ability for response options. Okay, if I want to say, hey, I only want certain people to attend, we can do that. It's not anything we've not done 1,000 times before. Some of the things to keep in mind that a lot of people don't realize, though. Teams meeting. Okay, once I go ahead and schedule this, we do also have some different options too. So, what is it doing in March? Oh, it wasn't the right thing. All right, cool. So now if I come into this event, we do have, no, my options. Did not schedule this as a Teams meeting. Weird. All right. We'll just jump into Meet now. Okay, don't need audio, it's just me. Microsoft with this has added a lot of different options to make the Teams meeting experience as close to a live event as we want. So I can come into this and I can say, who do I want to be able to participate? Who do I want to be able to come off mute? Who do I want to be able to turn on their camera? You may have a situation where you want to control how many different people can come in. So I can come in and I can look at our meeting options, and we have the options of, okay, default, who can bypass the lobby. If you're doing an event where you want to control attendance, this is one way you could take advantage of it. Also, you can control who can present. Now, allows you to be able to limit it because some of these other controls we're going to talk about are also going to be tied to that. Because when we do that, if you change it off of everyone, you now have two different roles in your meeting. You have your presenters and you have your attendees. And then the different rules will apply to that. So if I could say, okay, who can present? And then we have the option here for allow mic for attendees and allow camera for attendees. Okay, if you have that on there, if you turn it off, only the presenters will be able to come in and share their content. So I'm going to say who can present? People in my organization. Cool. You also, if you wanted to turn this into a live event style meeting, you could completely shut off chat. You could also set it so it's only available during the meeting. During the marathon we had last year, we had a situation where somebody decided to spam our chat. We had somebody coming in from India, so they're spamming the chat with all this garbage. So we end up on the meetings turning chat off until the bad actor got bored. Said, okay, well, these guys aren't any fun anymore. And they left. And then we were able to re-enable it and we were good to go. Also, I can turn off whether I want reactions. So if I want people to be able to clap or do any of the reactions that we have up here. Also, our meetings have breakout rooms. Kind of a cool feature if you want to be able to have teams split up, go work on something and come back in. As exactly, Jonathan, that's a reaction there. So not anything really super tricky. Okay, like I said, we've all participated. We've all worked with at least a dozen of these. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this one as we get ready for our next piece here. All right, now webinars. Now, when we're talking about a webinar, for most intents and purposes, they are the same. Now, there are some extra features that we get, but they're essentially interacting with and being, whether you're an attendee or a presenter, it's the same experience. The biggest difference we get, as we mentioned before, invites are by request. So I can say, as we can see here, for example, with Dorothy and her crew in the Wizard of Oz, they requested an audience with the Wizard of Oz, Oz the Great and Powerful. They requested that, so they were able to go in and interact with him. The other things that we get with a webinar is the ability to get attendee engagement data. So you get a little more information about, okay, just the basic attendance report that you get with the Teams meeting, but you get a little more, you get more information that goes along with that. Now, it also supports registration. So that way you can require people to register for your webinar, which really makes sense. If you want to have a webinar, you want to be able to have people to register, because what's the point in a webinar if you're not having a way to be able to interact with them? Like I said, with Teams meetings, we have similar options when it comes to maximum number of attendees. All right, I think that's the big thing. Now, like I said, the biggest difference is the registration page and then some of the other information. Microsoft is also making updates to webinars, and so they've got some really cool things they're working on. But that's as much as they've told us. Okay, they're working on improvements. What we'll have to kind of keep an eye on the roadmap to kind of see what they're working on when they're ready to say, hey, we got this cool stuff to show us. So if we go take a look at this. Okay, so for example, we have a couple different ways we can start doing a webinar. I can do the correct mouse. I can do a scheduled meeting. Not anything super tricky. Or I can do a webinar. So the interesting thing, though, is like I said, a Teams meeting does not have the ability to do registration. So it is kind of confusing. For example, if I come in to create a meeting, I do have an option here that says, okay, require registration. Currently set to none. Okay, so the long time it's kind of deceiving. what you can do with this. Well, what's the difference here? It's a Teams meeting. I can do a Teams meeting. I can turn on registration. Yes, you can. But as we can see up here in the top, it says new meeting. If I come over and say enable registration, you get a little spinny thing, says, hey, I'm going to go set it up for you. And now it's changed. It is now a webinar. So yes, you can enable registration on a Teams meeting, but now it is no longer a Teams meeting. It now becomes a webinar. So you get to take advantage of those new features. So with this one, we're going to call this one Kansas. Okay, cool. I can invite my presenters. Put on demo user here. Put in the information, schedule it. All that makes sense. All right, and then I can send it out. Also, what we can do is, like I said, we do get the ability for a registration page. So I can click on this to get a registration form. So it is, at this point in time, a fairly basic form. I can upload an image. I can specify the event details. Now, this is one of those things that's kind of annoying. I called my team, my webinar, something in particular. It didn't copy over. So it'd be nice if Microsoft fixed that, so I don't have to do that. But it does give you the ability to, if you need to copy over and have a different name than what your speakers see. We have a question, webinar for GCC, is it available? I will actually have to look, and we can check that here in a minute, and I will see. I don't remember 100% where we're at. What we can do, as far as I can add in speakers, I can put in a speaker name, I can put in a bio. Not really an option here for doing like a picture, which would be kind of cool. Also, we have our registration form. What information we're gathering from those people, from our attendees. By default, first name, last name, email. Makes sense because we've got to be able to send them the invite. With that, I can also add in some different fields. I can add in address, city, state, zip, country, industry, job title, organization, or custom. Now, if I select custom, there aren't a lot of options. As you can see, I can have a basic input or I can have a choice field. In a lot of organizations, when you're doing a webinar, there's a lot of times extra information, as in accepting terms saying, hey, yes, I'm signing up for this event. I'm okay with you reaching out to me for marketing information or whatever the legalese your company requires. Not a lot of really good options for that. So for example, I can select a choice field and I can put in some text here. Let's see. So we have quite a bit, but as you'll notice as well, it's not really designed for large amounts of text. Okay, yeah. I've hit the max number of characters. All right, so if I copy this, no, that's not, here we go. So I go ahead and paste it in. So as you can see, our maximum length is 255 characters. Fairly common number when we're dealing with max field sizes. So if you can fit all your legalese in under 255 characters, cool. If not, you may just have to put in a link there and say, okay, here, go review the terms and let us know if you're still okay with registering. When we're done, we can send this out. We can have the registration link. I can also click to view it in browser so I can see what it'll look like. But this ends up being what our view is. So I come in here, I can upload an image. Oh, it's not right. I don't have that. We'll go ahead and upload this one. Okay. The kind of way of being able to make it your own. There's not currently a lot of other options on the screen to make it yours, to make it match your organization, but the image at the top is the best way. And it does give you, as as we saw there, some information on what the best format is. So their preferred format is 918 pixels by 120. But as you noticed, if I upload a bigger image, it will let me shift and adjust it, so it'll pick the part that we want. All right. So that, in a nutshell, is webinars. It's not, like I said, the actual meeting experience is similar to a Teams meeting. Go ahead and save this. Okay, it's saved, close. Now I can send. Okay, it's setting that up. And now you can tell we have for our meeting, we have 3 different types of meetings all on my calendar here. So for example, let's pull up today's view just to make it easier to see. Okay, we have our user group meeting. We can see, yep, this is a Teams meeting. We have this icon, which denotes that this is a live event. And then also we have on the calendar that this is a webinar. So if you're looking at it, you can determine and figure out, okay, what type of event it is fairly simply. But if I jump into our webinar, okay, like I said, it's essentially the exact same thing. There are some cool things that we can do. Yes, some things that we can add to make our meeting better, because by default, the only interactions we've got with our attendees is they can come in, they can still come off chat. We have all that. Now, there are also some options where we can add an app. So for example, I can add a poly poll. There's also a Q&A app that I can throw in there, which now allows me to be able to have Q&A in my webinar or even in my Teams meeting. We can look through it, say, okay, cool. Now if I go ahead and hit add, this is going to add the functionality to my meeting. You can set this up beforehand, or you can do it directly in the meeting as needed. So this is going to spin here for a minute. Cool. I want to moderate it, for example. This allows me to be able to do the same thing we have in a live event where I say, hey, I want to pre-approve any questions before they immediately go out. And then I can go ahead and hit save. All right, so the UI, as you can see, is fairly similar to what we had before in a live event. We have the in review side, which is in the live event is new. We have published and we have dismissed. So dismissed, same thing in a live event, is just the question has already been addressed. I'm going to push it off so it's not cluttering up our view. So I'm going to go ahead and ask a question. Okay, how was the flying monkey soup in the cafeteria today? Now, since I am the producer or presenter on it, my question, if I ask it, is immediately published. So same thing as in a live event as making an announcement. So from here, the attendees have different options. They can react to it. We have the thumbs up, the love, laugh, celebrate, clapping hands, and oh, sad. Also can come in, attendees, they can come in, I can come in and respond to that. So for example, say somebody posted a question, I can respond to it directly. And then when I'm done with this, just so it's not cluttering up the view, I can now delete. And if I remember correctly, delete should put it. Nope, I actually full on deleted because it was my question. There's the option to be able to dismiss it from a regular attendee. But it does add in a lot of cool functionality, even some basic text formatting. If I want to bold, I want to italicize, and then I can do a basic discussion, or I can ask a question. Now, there's some other apps that we'll talk about here in a bit that we can take advantage of. But are there any questions at this point? No questions. Sweet. So either this is all clear or everybody is taking a nap. See, Jim is typing.
I think it looks good, Ryan. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I think we already did our demo here. Use Microsoft Forms for a poll. Yeah, I believe the app that it uses does use Microsoft Forms. I didn't see it in my tool here. I got to double check what they called it. There it is. So there is an option here because Microsoft has an out-of-the-box one that you can use for polls. But for example, here we can throw on a Microsoft form to be able to gather information from attendees. So I can select this, add. Now with this as well, there's also tabs for being able to take advantage of. So basically, you can prep some of these things beforehand. So you can have polls set up before, gather information. Some of the apps allow you to have a full platform to be able to gather information beforehand. Yeah, if we do forms, that'll allow us to embed a form. It says setting up the forms tab, and here we go. Okay. Ooh, I even have some good options. Okay. Ooh, I like this one. How are you feeling today? Selected. All right, save as draft. Okay, and so as the organizer and the presenter on this this meeting, whether it's a meeting or a webinar, I can set it up. As you'll see, this is still set in draft. So with that, I can come in, prep it, but when I'm ready to actually ask the question, I can launch it. So as soon as we're ready, say, hey, we're to the point, I want to ask the question. I hit launch. The poll is now live. And so what it does though as well is in the main meeting canvas, it shows that poll. So that way it's not kind of lost in the chat. It has come up as the main content. I can come in and say, yep, for me, I'm feeling great. Okay. And then as you can see, it does give us some graphs and some interactive say, hey, here's what it looks like. And if I want to go back to the question, we can. So yeah, polls, they always reference it as polls, but for the most part, forms, using a Microsoft form is the easiest way to get it. All right. So just, we've already done, the slides, there we go. So we've already done the demo on that one. Just a high level comparison. So if we're talking about it, if we're talking between live events, webinars, and Teams meetings, this is a lot of the biggest features that a lot of companies ask for. So for example, we have the maximum number of people. Whether you can do interaction with the attendees, like I said, we have Q&A, we have polls and Q&A, whether you can do registration, what type of delay there is, and whether attendees can actually come off mute, come off camera, turn their camera on, for example. All right, now some tips. If you're going to be doing a larger group other than just a Teams meeting, hey, if you're meeting beyond just, hey, this is my team, what can you do? The one thing to make sure you get the best experience is test everything. If you're having somebody do a presentation, have them test and go through their entire presentation. I was working with a company a few weeks ago, and we're going through, did a tech check, everything was good. The morning of the event, we get in there, and they say, oh yeah, by the way, we have a video we want to play. Okay, we tested out, it was not working. The buffering was just bad, so it was not a good experience. So we had to kind of change it up. So definitely make sure you check everything. With that as well, if you change something, test it all again, because you never know how something is going to change and impact another part of your meeting. Also, be mindful of bandwidth, especially if we're talking full-on desktop sharing like I'm doing now. This is going to be the most bandwidth consuming option out there. If we're talking live events as well, we're pushing out a lot of content. But keep in mind is if you're doing a large event with your whole organization, that everybody, you may have one person that has to have a decent pipe to push the content up, but everyone is going to be consuming that information. So if your network is not configured properly, you can bring down your firewalls to their knees. Just have way too many people going out, accessing a single point and pulling all that content in. If you're doing live events, Microsoft does have what they call their eCDN partners, which allows you to be able to pull the content inside. So it has one connection going to the internet coming in, then everybody accesses it from that one centralized hosted CDN within your environment. Saves a lot on bandwidth and makes your network traffic look, well, not look, but makes your network traffic a lot better. Also, make sure you have a run of show. One of those things I talk about with Galen a lot is when we're doing these events, the run of show really helps make sure that everybody's on the same page. Who's doing the introduction? Who's talking about this part? Okay, when we're going to go to this part. Okay, well, we got these slides here. In this slide, we have the video. Make sure you know what's going on, which will help with your testing. Your run will show, identify, okay, hey, we got a video at this part. We need to make sure we test that. Make sure that transition works to that. We need to make sure the handoff from presenter A to presenter B works. If we want to go from the Good Witch to go to the Wizard of Oz, we need to make sure that that transition is ready because there's some differences in magic there that we have to work with. But make sure the run of show makes sure you can actually transition things appropriately. Also, lighting. Lighting is one of those things that is key. As you'll notice, sometimes as I'm moving around, I don't have the best option here. So I move to the side here and I get dark. I come back in the center, everything's good. Make sure you know your lighting situation, which goes back to testing. Make sure you're testing with the same conditions, same situation. I have a nice big window over here, not a whole lot of sunlight coming in at this point in time, but it's there. It works. Life is good. But if it's a different time of day, there may be different amounts of ambient light, which can change things out. Also, you never know if the gardening crew is going to come through and be mowing your yard or at your neighbor's yard at the same time frame. So just kind of make sure you kind of keep things consistent as much as you can. But talking about lighting, one of the things you want to make sure is you want to light up the person's face, but you don't want too much light. There are some cameras that if you get too much light, you're just going to get washed out and it just doesn't look good. With that as well, make sure you have more than just front lighting. In this situation, I have a light in front. I also have a light behind, lighting up the wall behind me. By having that, it allows the software, so in this case, Teams, to do a better job of being able to identify the differences between you and the background. So if I turn off my backlight, the edges get a little more blurry, less defined, because it's trying to figure out, okay, I'm not 100% sure where the difference is. But with the light here and the light there, it's obvious to it, okay, here's where I need to crop off. Also be aware of sound beyond just, okay, your speaking sound, because a lot of us have some fairly decent devices, but also just ambient sound. Teams does a good job of removing some noises, but there's things that run in the background that may or may not pick up. So just kind of make sure you, as part of your tests, check how the sound quality is. Make sure there have been meetings I've been in where somebody's got a microphone that occasionally wigs out and they sound all robotic or chipmunks. So make sure if that's the case, try and for your webinar or your meeting, go with a different audio device. Make sure you don't have any issues that way. Also, if you have the ability, take advantage of PowerPoint Live. And we'll talk about this here in a minute, but it gets you a lot of functionality. And it's like, as we talked about before with bandwidth, it uses the least amount of bandwidth to send the content up to the internet and to your attendees. And the reason is Teams renders to PowerPoint instead of having to send every single pixel that I'm sharing on my screen. So it gives you a lot better option. Plus, you can do some cool things with it. I don't want to take too much away from it. But also be aware of recordings. Okay, like I said, Teams live event will record automatically. You don't have to worry about it. Nice and easy. But if you're doing a Teams meeting or a webinar, you need to remember to hit that record button. If you don't, you have nothing. Also, talking about recordings, if you're in your meeting and you're doing a spotlight, So say, for example, the biggest thing I'm doing is I am just sitting here talking. We don't have the slides or whatever, and just doing a discussion. I'm going to spotlight my content. In the recording, it doesn't come out the way it looks in the meeting. So in the recording, it'll show me talking and then everybody else here. So for example, in this meeting, let's see, let's do a quick check here. We have 14 people. So we'll have a number of the little picture profiles, alphabet soup here, and that's it. So make sure as you're testing as well, test your recordings. Make sure that everything is coming through the way you want it to, because otherwise you're going to get your video and it's not going to be of any value to anybody. There we go. So yeah, if the recording is key, don't use spotlighting. It doesn't impact. It's not going to get you the experience you're looking for. All right, now we mentioned PowerPoint Live. Works in a Teams meeting or webinar. Does not work in live events. The other cool thing that you can do, as we mentioned, lower bandwidth, but also you don't have to worry about audio. If you have a video you're playing, it'll automatically play the audio with it. So for example, right now, if I want to include any video audio, I have to make sure I come up and I either, as I'm sharing, select the option to include computer sound, or I can come up to the top. You guys probably aren't seeing this because Teams hiding it, but there's also an option next to the left of stop presenting that says include computer sound. If you do a PowerPoint Live, you tell it to present in Teams, you don't have to worry about it. It automatically comes through. The sound is coming straight across. Also, the attendees can, if you allow them, go through the slides at their own pace. So say, for example, I'm talking through all this. You want to go back and look at that slide about pro tips or the table. If you wanted to, you could go back and look at it. Now, granted, you could also move forward and go look at it that way too. But it does give them the option to be able to consume it more at their own pace, which gives you more, allows more diversity, allows people to be able to, that may have a harder time consuming the content, to be able to go back and take advantage of it. And one of the things as well is Teams meetings also do have the ability to do captions. So if we're talking about, we'll make sure we're inclusive of everybody with whatever situation they're in. That definitely comes in handy as well. Click. All right. Are there any questions, comments, concerns? I know we do have the one I do owe you an answer on GCC for webinars. I'll look that up here in a sec. Actually, while everybody's queuing up their questions, I'll go gather that up real quick just to verify. So one of the things, if you're not aware, there is the Microsoft 365 roadmap. I'll go check. Make sure here before I get too far. Don't want to share something that we don't want seen. All right, so for example, I can come into here and I can say I want, that's right, there it is. Okay, Microsoft Teams. And I can say I want the cloud instance for DoD GCC High, for example. And then search for webinar. All right, Teams webinar capabilities in GCC is currently rolling out. It says it went GA last month. So to answer your question, yes, it should be coming out soon. Rolling out means they have their phased approach, but it should be showing up in your dashboard and in your meetings before too long. All right, any other questions? All right, if there are no questions, actually, I can go back to slides here. That being said, I'd like to thank everybody for attending today. I do have my contact information up here on the screen. If you, oops, let's get that screen. If you have any questions that you may think about afterwards, like, hey, I should have asked this, or you didn't want to ask it in front of everybody else, go ahead and reach out to me. More than willing to answer those and respond to those questions. And that being said, thank you for attending.